Hello. We're going to think about the last two stages in developmental phonics. Those are the syllable juncture and derivational constancy stages today. And we're also going to think about some of the academic language targets. Those are words that are specific to this particular discipline that are important to know so that we can teach those words to students as well. So what's the difference between a homophone and a homograph? We're going to address these two learning goals through this screencast. And as we work through the screencast, it's a good idea to have your weekly prep in front of you so you can record your thinking as we move forward. So there are 5 spelling stages in phonics. The pre-phonemic stage is when kids are doing the scribble writing or the gesturing with the pen. It's before they understand that what we're really doing when we write is mapping sounds onto particular symbols, graphophonemic cueing system. The second stage is letter name stage, and in letter name stage, kids are learning about primarily consonants and how we combine those consonants to represent sounds. So when you hear the sound ch, we're teaching children that it is represented by 2 letters, C and H. So over here and throughout this slideshow, you'll see examples of what we call anchor charts. So an anchor chart is just a graphic. Usually teachers make them with or for students, and they use them to introduce a phonics feature sometimes, or to create an inventory of phonics features that kids are learning over time. And these anchor charts stay in the instructional space so that kids can review these features. So, if this anchor chart is hanging in a classroom, if a child's trying to write the word chicken, they might remember, oh yeah, that's that CH we talked about the other day. So in the letter name stage, we're really helping kids think about how to listen for sounds and then think about what are the graphemes that you would write for those sounds. Then there's the within word stage, and this stage as well. The within word stage, kids are thinking about what's happening within the word, the middle part of the vowel. And we're also helping kids think about how we combine letters to make particular sounds. So in this anchor chart, we have an example of the magic E. And when you add an E to the end of a word, it's going to kick the vowel preceding it and tell it to say its name. So we have vowel consonant E. Mad turns into maid, right? Kit turns into kite. So within word and letter name, we're in those stages. We're really thinking about helping kids match a sound to a grapheme. That's what work we're doing at that point. And we use, of course, word study sorts to help them make those comparisons in sound. Now, when we move into syllable juncture, we're doing something a little bit different. So in syllable juncture, we're asking kids to think about multiple syllable words. We're asking them to figure out how to pronounce and how to record sounds that they're hearing in multiple syllable words. But it's not just about sound. So for example, on this anchor chart, we teach kids in the syllable juncture stage this thing called inflected endings, and we'll get to that in a minute. ED is an inflected ending that when you put it at the end of words indicates that that word happened yesterday. So we have watched, and we have rained, and we have melted. Now, if you listen to those words, they sound different at the end. When you say watched, it sounds like it should end with a T. That's right. And rained sounds like it should be ending with an ED. Melted sounds like a very heavy ED, right? So in this sort, the teacher has asked kids to sort these words not by how they're spelled. It's not necessarily a pattern sort because they would all have the same pattern, but sorting them by how the ED sounds at the end of the word. And here's the lesson in this sort. When you're trying to say that something happened yesterday, most of the time you're going to put an ED, inflected ending, at the end of that word. But sometimes you'll have to be careful because you'll have to think about the meaning of the word. You'll have to think, well, I'm writing the word watched, and it means it happened yesterday. And that happened yesterday ending is ed, even though I don't hear it. So the interesting thing that's happening in syllable juncture and derivational constancy is we are beginning to move away from just thinking about how sounds map onto letters to thinking about the meaningful chunks that are in words and how we use those meaningful chunks. Like we know ed means past tense, even when it doesn't sound like an ed. So we'll get into those particular features. And at the end of this screencast, I'll show you a video of a teacher teaching syllable juncture because you use different strategies than the clear-cut sound pattern blind sorts. In derivational constancy, this is the last stage in spelling, and it's really focused on the meanings of Greek and Latin roots. And we're teaching kids those particular parts of words and then how to put them together. So if you know viz means to see, and you put in front of it, which means not, and a bull at the end, you're going to get a word that means not able to see, invisible, right? And so in derivational constancy, as the term indicates, we're looking at the derivation of words, and we're looking, what is the history of the root viz, and what does it mean in Greek? And when we put all these Greek and Latin roots and suffixes and prefixes together, how does it create a different word? So in derivational constancy, it's really about meaning and using chunks of words that are associated to particular meanings. So those are our 5 stages. So let's think a little bit about what kids are learning in the syllable juncture stage. So in syllable juncture, they're learning how to pronounce multiple syllable words. Now, one of the techniques that we could use to help kids learn multiple syllable word pronunciation is we could have them do what we call syllabication. Now, syllabication is just a practice where you teach kids how to identify vowels and consonants so that you can show them how to break a word apart. So, for example, if the child was looking at this word basket, so it's the first word we have here, basket, we would first teach kids to, underneath the word, write the vowels. Here's a vowel and here's a vowel. And that sort of makes a bracket. We find the vowels first. And then we are going to map what's in between the vowels. So it's a consonant and a consonant. And then there is a particular rule for how you break certain kinds of syllables. So what we have here is we have a vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel. And in a vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel pattern, you most likely split the word between the 2 consonants. So kids learn that particular pattern. They learn how to map the vowels and consonants in a word, and then where it would split depending on which code they found. When you have a vowel, consonant, consonant word, you're going to have 2 short vowels probably. So this word would be pronounced basket, and indeed it is. This is a particular strategy for helping kids attack multiple syllable words that is in reading programs like Foundations, which is produced by Foundations and Orton Gillingham. They use syllabication a great deal with older readers. So let's see how a teacher explains this to her parents.
Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about what syllabication.
Yep.
Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about what syllabication is and why we teach this critical strategy in our Orton Gillingham courses.
Sorry.
Syllabication is a series of steps that gives our students a tool to break down unfamiliar multisyllabic words. So how many times have we asked our students, oh, just sound it out, just break apart the word? Well, that's great and dandy for our students that are not struggling with reading. However, our struggling readers really need a tool. They need explicit instruction on how to break apart unfamiliar multisyllabic words. In our Phonics First and Structures courses, we teach the 8 different syllable types in English and also the 3 different division patterns. As the student continues throughout the program, the syllabication is going to become more advanced. So for example, we have a really long word here. Many of our students are going to look at this, they're going to read it, no problem. However, we have our other students that may be struggling. They may look at that word and really feel discouraged. So we want to make sure and encourage them to practice syllabication because this is going to help them break apart words into more manageable chunks. So we start first with the VCCV pattern, and this is the most commonly used pattern in our English language. So what we do is we make it multisensory and we maybe sing our song. Vowels, bridge, consonant, split. So we underline our first 2 vowels. Many of our students are going to want to go ahead here, but no, slow down. Only work with 2 vowels at a time. So we underline our vowels, vowels, bridge, consonant, split. We only want 2 consonants on the bridge. If we had more than that, the bridge might fall down. All right, we keep on going because we have another vowel to link here. Remember, every syllable has a vowel, so we can't forget about this guy over here. So we sing our song again. Vowels, bridge, consonant, split. All right, now we're going to label our syllable types. These are closed syllables because the consonant stops the vowel from saying its name. So if you remember from the training, these are 3 closed syllables, and we label that with CL for closed. Last step is we're going to read all together. So we're going to go fantastic, fantastic. Ooh, awesome. So our struggling readers have started with a very long, unfamiliar word. Now they were able to break it down into its chunks and read the word. They may feel really good about that. You may see slowly but surely they're increasing their confidence with their reading. Take a look at a first grade student going through all the syllabication steps.
Underline and label the vowels. What's our next step?
Draw a bridge.
Yep, draw a bridge. How many letters do you have on your bridge?
3.
3. Can we have 3 letters on the bridge? Nope. So what do you got to do? Scoop them out, scoop them on up. Go ahead and label it. What pattern do we have? VCCV. So go ahead and divide it based on the pattern. Is our first syllable open or closed?
Closed.
Go ahead and label it. Second syllable?
Closed.
Closed. And what does our first syllable say?
This.
This. Second syllable?
Dress.
What's our word?
This.
Excellent.
As students do this on a consistent basis, our goal is for them to internalize the syllabication process and make reading multi-syllable words more automatic. The process of syllabication can make a world of difference for our struggling readers.
So that's one perspective on how you can help kids learn to pronounce those names. If you're moving on to 3640, we'll learn how you can help kids do this work a little bit more efficiently by having them recognize particular phonics patterns. So when they're looking to pronounce this word, they would first look at the re and then lax, and they can actually decode it maybe a little bit more quickly. We didn't learn too much about syllabication in phonics because that's really more for kids who are struggling readers. So you might learn about that in a reading intervention course or an Orton Gillingham or Wilson Reading Foundations type program. It's kind of program specific, but I just want you to be aware of what it is. All right, so Again, here's that view of what they're doing is they're finding the vowels and then labeling the consonants and then consulting, well, which is the pattern? And then how do I split that word? Spastic. Label the vowels, consonant in between. We've got a VCV word, so we're going to split it after the consonant. Oops. And so VCV, yeah, it should be here. And that would be vegan. And this word is here it is, VCV here. So here we've got VCV. And we're splitting it here, and we get vegan. But in reality, look, this rule would have applied too, right? Knowing when to split this would be dependent on knowing this is a short vowel, and syllabication is supposed to teach us how to pronounce that vowel. So I think there's sort of a limited utility to syllabication, but you should know what it is. All right, so let's think about some of the academic language that is part of this syllable juncture stage. There aren't 5 particular features that kids are learning in syllable juncture and derivational constancy stage. Instead, there are a number of concepts that they're learning. Okay, so one is this idea of open and closed syllable. So when you say the word pancake, there are 2 syllables in that word, pancake. We can clap it. And an open syllable is a syllable in which the vowel is not being stopped. It just keeps making sound. And a closed syllable is a syllable that ends, or is a vowel sound that is cut off by a consonant. So when the word pancake, we have 2 closed syllables because we start to make a vowel sound, and it's cut by the consonant. Pan, it's cut, so that it's closed. Pan, cake. The vowel doesn't just keep going, it's cut, okay? Now that's different than the word, we have pancake, and then here's the word teapot. Okay, now when we break that into syllables, teapot, 2 syllables. The first one, T, do you hear how that just keeps going? The vowel just keeps going. There isn't anything to cut it. So we would call the T part of teapot, that first syllable is open, teapot. Now the second syllable in teapot is closed. You start to make the vowel ah, and then it's cut off by that t. So on pancake, you have 2 closed syllables, and on teapot, you have an open syllable followed by a closed syllable. Let's try this with coat rack. What kind of syllable is the first syllable? Coat, closed. And the second one, rack, closed. The vowel got cut off on both of those words. How about gopher? Go open, fur closed. Good. How about peacock? P is open, cock closed. So you can hear whether or not the vowel is being cut off or not. So that's one thing that kids are learning in syllable juncture, how to listen for those types of syllables, and then thinking about what that means in terms of how those syllables would be spelled. Another little feature that's part of this stage is this idea of compound words. So hat rack, teapot, and pancakes are all examples of words that are made by gluing 2 words together. Compound words. Compound words are nice because if you know how to spell each part of the compound word, you can spell the whole long word. All right, we are going to talk in a little bit about how we make words past tense or plural or add ing. But one of the things kids are learning is this idea of irregular plurals. You know, a lot of times when we have a word, we add s, the inflected ending s, to show that there's more than one. So you have hat, and then you have more than one, you have hats. But there are irregular patterns. So when we have one child, when we have two, we don't call them the childs. They're children. Man becomes men. And so kids have to learn these particular patterns and combinations. So irregular plurals is something kids are learning in syllable juncture. Kids are learning contractions, right? How do we put two words together using an apostrophe to make a new word? So contractions are going to be part of syllable juncture. Oh, now here comes some really good academic language or vocabulary related to our discipline. Homophones. Kids have to learn that sometimes in English, we have two or more words that sound the same. So homophone. Homo means same, and phone means sound. So the title here is giving you a clue as to what the word means. Same sound words. So the word see and the word see sound the same, but they're spelled differently, and that helps us understand what the meaning of the word is when we read it. So when we see the word be, and when we see the word be, yeah, that's fine, and it has two E's, we know it's talking about the animal, right? Now, this can be tricky when we're writing those words because we just have to remember which way to spell the particular application that we're looking for. All right, so those are homophones. That's different, oh boy, than homographs. Take this apart though. Remember, homo means same, and graph means grapheme or letter. So a homograph is two words that sound the same, but they're also spelled the same, but they mean different things. So over here you have the example of bat and bat. Spelled the same, sound the same, mean different things. And you have to tell that from the context. So I feel fine, or I have to pay a fine. Those words mean two different things. Now this is different than a heteronym. Uh-oh, here we go. Hetero means different. All right, so we have words that have the same spelling, but different pronunciation. So hetero means different and nym means name. So different pronunciation. They don't sound alike, even though they're spelled the same. And of course, they would have different meanings. So you have desert and you have dessert. Now they're spelled the same way, but they're pronounced a little bit different and they mean different, right? We don't go out to Dairy Queen for a dessert. And then you have over here, you have a bow, B-O-W, but this is also the bow or front of a ship, also spelled B-O-W. So you spell them the same, they look the same, but they're pronounced different and they mean different. So heteronyms. And then, let's keep going. Anything that you're going to add to the front of a word is called or anything you're going to add to the front or back of a word is called an affix. So an affix is anything you're going to affix to the front or back of a word. The ones we put at the front of a word are called prefixes because the word prefix has the prefix pre. And anything you're going to put to the end of a word is a suffix. Now, prefixes and suffixes are types of affixes, right? And they have meaning. So if you know that re, the prefix re means to do it again, then repay means to pay again. So what kids are learning is how to spell these prefixes and suffixes, but also what they mean and how they change the meaning of words. It's very important that you remember that prefixes and suffixes add to the meaning of words. They can change the meaning of words. They can amplify the meaning of words. So those are affixes. Now here's a little tricky piece, and this is really important. What are you adding prefixes and suffixes to? Well, you can add them to two types of words. You can add them to root words or base words. Now, there is a difference, even though people sometimes use them synonymously. A root word is a word that when you take off all the prefixes and suffixes, it can't stand alone. It doesn't represent an idea by itself. So in the example, you have the word accept. X is the prefix. What's left over is sept is, and it is a root, because by itself, when you take the prefix off, we just can't say sept and have people understand it's not a word in our working language. So when the word is stripped of its prefixes and suffixes, if that word cannot stand alone, it's a root. It needs other things. Roots need the other parts of the tree to survive, right? And if the word can stand alone, when you take off the prefix or suffix. So if we have the word inside, when you take the prefix in off, you still have the word side, and that's actually a word in English. So that is a base. Bases are words that can stand alone. They're actual words in our English. So in the word pancake, it's a compound word. Is pancake two roots or two bases? That's right, it's two bases, pancake, right? So bases can stand alone. That's really an important part to know. Okay, now, the other thing that we can add to bases are inflected endings. Now, inflected endings are not suffixes. They're a little different. They are parts of a word, a little morpheme, a little meaningful chunk that you can add to a word, but it doesn't change the meaning of the word as much as it changes its tense or possession. So its grammatical function, okay? So here are the inflected endings. ed, meaning past tense, ing, meaning present participle, s or es, meaning plural, and then apostrophe s or s apostrophe, meaning possession. So these are the inflected endings. And in syllable juncture, we're teaching kids what are the rules for adding these inflected endings. So for example, when you want to make something plural, most of the time you can just add s, except if that word ends with s, sh, ch, x, z, or s, like in the word dress, you can't just add another s because you can't hear the plural. So dress sounds the same as dress, right? So we have to add that E to give it a little bit of a sound difference so we can hear, oh, what you mean to do with that word is add the S. So dresses, boxes, peaches. So if the word ends, and we would teach this in syllable juncture, if the word ends in S, sh, ch, x, z, or ss, we're going to add es. And then this crazy thing, if a word ends in y, we're going to change that y to I and add es, right? So these are the kinds of things we're teaching kids about inflected endings. See, it's not just about sound anymore. It's about the visual patterns that they're seeing in the base word. If the base word ends with a consonant and has a short vowel or an R control vowel, you can just add S. If it ends with something else, you have like an SS, then you have to add ES. So that's what we're learning. Inflected endings, you got to know what those are. Inflected endings are added to the end of words, so they are affixes. But think about it as categories. So you have affixes up here, means anything you're adding to the beginning or end of a word. And under that category, you have prefixes, you have suffixes, and you have inflected endings. Inflected endings are not suffixes. Okay. All right, so now, the other way we can talk about chunks of words is by describing them as free or bound. Now, a morpheme is a meaningful chunk of a word. So when you add an S to the end of a word like dog, it's a meaningful chunk. It's not a whole word in itself, right, when you add the S to dog, but it does communicate some meaning. It's not just a sound when it's added to the end of the word. Dog becomes dogs, which means more than one. So we need a way to think about the meaningful chunks in words, not just the sound chunks. And the way we describe these is we say any meaningful chunk is a morpheme. So in the word pancake, we have two meaningful chunks, pancake. In the word hats, how many morphemes do we have? Well, we have hat, and we have the S at the end of the word means more than one, so we have two meaningful chunks. In the word return, how many morphemes do we have? Return. And in the word inflection, how many meaningful chunks do we have? Well, if you're up on your derivational constancy prefixes and suffixes, you have in, flect, and shun. You have three parts. Those are the meaningful chunks. All right. But now we need to determine if the morpheme is free, which means it can stand alone and it has meaning in and of itself. Or is it bound? Does it only have meaning if it's glued to something else? So in the word pancake, you have two base words. And we know base words can stand on their own. So what you have here is a free morpheme and a free morpheme. In the word hats, hat can stand alone, so it's free. And at the end, we can't just walk up to somebody and say, right? And then they know we're meaning plural somehow. So the s is a bound morpheme. In the word return, we have two chunks. Re is bound because it doesn't stand by itself. You can't just say re and people understand what you're saying. Turn is free because it stands by itself. And then we have inflection. So in is bound, doesn't make sense by itself. There is a word in English, but it's not this in, which means inside. Flect is bound and shun is bound. So those are all bound morphemes. So when you're looking at a word, and this is really common on the Reading 090 test for your licensure, they might ask you, how many morphemes in the word pancake? Which morpheme in pancake is free? Is the first syllable in pancake open or closed? So these are all academic language targets that you need to know how to apply to words. So let's practice that. Okay, here we go. In the word revision, re is what will we call re? It's a prefix. Is it a bound morpheme or free morpheme? It's also a bound morpheme. The viz right here, is it a root or is it a base? It's a root because it can't stand by itself. And because it can't stand by itself, it would be what kind of morpheme? Bound. It has to be bound to something else. Shun is it a prefix or suffix? Suffix. Good. You're going to add es to words that end in, what do you got? Double S, CH, SH, X, and double S. Oh, here's a tricky one. C has a soft sound like in circus when followed by, well, this is just a little add-in piece here. Sometimes people teach this when they're in the letter name stage. Other times they wait till syllable juncture. When a C is followed by I, E, or Y, it can make that S sound. The same is true of G's. Those are two letters that have a hard and a soft sound. When G is followed by an I, E, or Y, it's going to make a J sound. All right. So let me show you what a lesson looks like for syllable juncture, because you'll get a sense of how this is done a little bit differently than what we did with letter name and within word stage features. I would say you'd start to see syllable juncture features being taught in about third, fourth grade, and moving all the way through maybe fifth or sixth before you get into derivational constancy too far. Sorry.
Students engage in an inductive process to learn the spelling pattern for doubling the endings of verbs. The teacher explains that this pattern has posed a challenge for students in their everyday writing. Students examine the features of words that double the final consonant when ed is added. To do so, they apply their knowledge of linguistic terms such as base and root words, short vowels, and consonant blends. They jointly agree on a rule that describes this pattern, then examine their own writing in their writer's notebooks to check for correct application of the pattern.
Everything that I'm doing in guided reading or word study or writing or whatever I'm doing relates directly back to those expectations in the curriculum. I need to look at that information, and then I need to translate that into what effective instruction for children at a variety of levels is going to be. So I need to think about fluency. I need to think about word recognition. Most of all, I need to think about comprehension and how do I build that at whatever level of text that the children are in. All right, boys and girls, today we're going to talk about something that we need to learn. I was looking at those lovely paragraphs you wrote the other day about, what did we write about? Oh, we used our heart map, and we were going to write about something that happened in the past. And when I was looking at them last night, I noticed something in the way that you're using some words that I think we need to do a little work on. Can anybody look at the chart behind me and tell me what it is that we need to do a little work on? Cole?
The ED.
Good, adding that ED. Why is that causing us problems? Why are we having difficulty with these? Melissa?
Well, because some people just put one of the doubles if we add ED and there's one vowel and then a consonant. So you'd have to put a double, and sometimes people just put one and ED.
You explained that very, very well. We've been working on that rule for a while, but how many people are having a hard time remembering when they're supposed to add that extra? So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at these words, and we're going to see if we can figure out something that's going to help us. Melissa told us the rule, but sometimes I find rules are hard to apply. So I like to look at what's going on. How about you? Good. Okay, we're going to look at these words. And the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the root word or the base word. Who can look at the first one and tell me what the base word is? Natalie?
Plan.
Good. Plan. We're going to underline that base word because that's going to give us a little help. What's the next word? What does it say? Cassie?
Hop.
Good. Can you say it out loud so I can really hear?
Hop.
Hopped. Huh. Planned. Hopped. What are you noticing, Elliot?
Is they both have a double
Good. Let's
and an E and an E
Good.
and a D.
Good for you, Elliot. You noticed a lot of things up there. Can you look at this word, Elliot, and tell me what the base word is?
MOP.
Good. And what does that word say when you put all those letters together?
Mop.
Good. Try it again.
Mop.
Good. What is it?
Mop.
Mop. You have it. Excellent. Let's go up here. What is the, Julia, base word?
Trap.
And there's something funny at the beginning that we sometimes forget. What do we call those pieces? Melissa?
It's a blend.
It's a blend, and sometimes we don't always hear that R, do we? So we have to watch for that. So let's look very carefully. And what did we do in every one of those letters before we added ED? Matthew?
We told you what the actual word was.
Good. And then what else did we do? What did we do to the word?
Then we underlined the root word.
Good. And then what did we do?
Then we spelled the word.
Okay. Evan?
We doubled the last consonant because there was a vowel before the last consonant.
Good.
Then we added ed.
Good. So when we're looking or writing or reading words, we have to be thinking all the time about what we're doing to get those words down. So now what we need to figure out, is there a rule or a reason that we can come up with that will help us understand how to add ed to these type of words? So I want you to have a look at the words, and what we're going to do first is we're going to just read the root words. Ready? Read with me.
Plan, hop, mop, drag, tap, trap, draw, hum, hug, clap.
What do you notice about all of those root words? What do you notice about them? What is the same about all of these base words? Think about it.
They all end in consonants.
They all end in consonants. Let's see if he's right. N, P, P, G, E, P, J, G, L, G, and P. Good. So we notice they all end in a consonant. How many consonants do they end in?
1, 2,
1 consonant after what?
vowel.
Good, Natalie. After a vowel.
Short vowel.
What kind of vowel?
Short vowel.
Okay, so let's think about that then. Natalie says we have 1 consonant after a
Short vowel.
short vowel. So we've come back to our words again, and we've seen that they're kind of short little words, aren't they? How many letters are in each of our root words? Melissa?
3 or 4.
3 or 4. Some of them have a blend at the beginning. So let's see. We have a short vowel in each one. And what do we have right after the vowel?
Consonant.
And when we have a short vowel and 1 consonant after the vowel,
You double it and then you
what do I do? Garrett?
You double it and then you add it.
You double what?
The consonant.
And? Okay, do you think we can write this as a rule?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start. It's a constant dance between curriculum expectations, text level that the kids are working in, and things you really identify as those really small pieces that are there that may make a big difference for students. How do I bring that together, and how do I turn that into a teachable moment for a group or a whole class or an individual student? Is basically pulling all those pieces together. And when you do it effectively, you see progress in your students. So I have kind of taken that rule and written it out for you. And the rule is this. Who can read with me? Have a look first. Read it first.
Double the consonants and add ed to words ending in 1 short vowel and 1 consonant.
Okay, that's a big long rule, and that's a lot of words to remember. But I want you to think about what all those base words look like. Close your eyes for a minute. You're going to visualize the word mop. How many letters do you see?
3.
Good. How many vowels do you see?
3.
Think again. Mop. How many vowels do you see? And what is the vowel? 1. And what's the vowel? Good. So when we're looking at those little words, we have to check to make sure we added ed properly. All right. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our writer's notebook, and we're going to look at that piece of writing we did yesterday, and we're going to see if we can find a place where we used ed words. Then you're going to underline them and make sure that you spelled them properly. Think we can do that?
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to our seats.
So that gives you a sense of what these lesson plans look like, and they're a little bit different than the straightforward word study sorts that we've done for within word and letter name stage features. Interestingly, in the beginning of this, she was talking about those first meaningful morphemes in these words as roots or bases, right? And usually I think that's what teachers do if they're not sure which it is, right? But then she switched and she called each of those words trap, jog, hum. She called those bases. Now bases can stand alone, so all those words stand alone, and they are free, because they can stand alone, free morphemes. So she's adding ed to all these words. Is that a suffix or an inflected ending? Inflected ending. What's tricky about the word trapped? Why do kids not hear the R? Yeah, not because it's a blend, because it's an affricate in that particular word. That's why it's hard to hear the because we're hearing more of a chur, really. All right, so
And make sure that
whoops, that concludes our look at this. You know, when you're creating a clear demonstration then for syllable juncture features, you are probably having a conversation like that teacher did. And the conversation will then yield, if you're writing down things to help kids remember that feature, it'll end in this kind of anchor chart that kids can then refer to as they're writing. In derivational constancy, we move forward in thinking about the suffixes, prefixes, and roots and bases in words. In derivational constancy, we're thinking about the derivation or where the word came from, and that helps us understand how to pronounce it and what the piece means. And so it begins to really work well with content area academic language targets. So if kids are in a social studies class and they're learning about democracy in your language arts class, then you can think about the Greek root dem, and that it means people. And when you add other pieces to that word, how it creates a bigger concept. So derivational constancy continues in this vein of learning about prefixes, suffixes, roots, and bases, and analyzing the derivation or where the word came from and what the word means. So it's a lot about vocabulary related to those chunks that kids are learning. Sorts might be switched so that you're having kids sort words for having particular roots, bases, prefixes, or suffixes, and then thinking about how adding, when you add pre to a word, how does it change the meaning of that word? So your next bit of work is to just read parts of the Words Their Way text that will help you answer the next couple of questions on the Syllable Juncture Derivational Constancy empty outline. And then at the very end, I want you to think about what you learned from the text as well as the screencast to answer a few application questions. You're going to have to apply what you've learned about these phonics academic language targets to answer a few questions. Those questions at the end are very much like what you would see on a Reading Foundations 090 test, and what you'll see in your foundational concepts test that will happen in your next literacy class 3640. Thank you.